Diplomacy is not just failing, it is collapsing in real time. What you are witnessing is not a disagreement, not a negotiation breakdown, but the silent detonation of a geopolitical time bomb that has been carefully wired for years. When Donald Trump ordered the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, it was presented as strength, as dominance, as the ultimate leverage move. But beneath that bold surface lies something far more dangerous, a catastrophic miscalculation. Because in the world of great power, chess, the move that looks strongest is often the one that seals your defeat. And right now, Washington is no longer the hunter. It has stepped blindly into the role of the prey. What happened in Islamabad was never diplomacy. It was theater, carefully staged, perfectly timed, and brilliantly executed. While American negotiators sat across the table believing they were tightening pressure, something far more consequential was unfolding behind the scenes. Time was being bought. Every hour, every handshake, every empty promise was not a step toward peace, but a calculated delay. And while Washington celebrated imaginary progress, the real operation was already in motion. Across the Caspian Sea, under layers of secrecy, advanced systems were being deployed, air defense networks, electronic warfare platforms, and logistical corridors were quietly taking shape. By the time the world realized what was happening, the balance had already shifted. Trump believed the blockade would choke Iran. He believed cutting off oil flow would force submission. It was a simple, almost instinctive move. The kind of decision that works in business deals but fails catastrophically in geopolitical warfare. Because the Strait of Hormuz is not just Iran's lifeline. It is the artery of the global economy. By attempting to strangle one opponent, Washington has placed its hands around its own throat. Oil prices surge, markets panic. Allies begin to question the very foundation of the system they depend on. Europe feels the pressure. Asia feels the shock. And suddenly, the move designed to project dominance begins to unravel the very order it was meant to protect. This is where the trap reveals itself. Russia and Iran do not need to win a conventional war. They do not need to outspend or outgun the United States. They only need to let the consequences of this single decision cascade. Every dollar increase in oil prices becomes a weapon. Every disrupted supply chain becomes a strategic strike. Every moment of uncertainty erodes confidence in American leadership. This is not warfare of explosions. This is warfare of systems. And in this domain, patience beats power. While Washington struggles to stabilize the fallout, the second phase begins. Military integration. Not symbolic cooperation, but real, operational fusion. Advanced air defense systems are positioned across critical zones. Electronic warfare capabilities expand into a layered shield that challenges even the most sophisticated Western technologies. The battlefield is no longer defined by tanks and jets alone. It is defined by signals, data, and control. When those are disrupted, even the most advanced machines become liabilities. A fighter jet without guidance is not an asset. It is a risk. A fleet without coordination is not a force. It is a target. This transformation is what makes the situation truly dangerous, because it changes the rules of engagement entirely. The United States has built its dominance on precision, connectivity, and technological superiority, but those strengths depend on stable systems, and those systems are now under direct threat. Electronic warfare does not destroy hardware. It disables the logic that makes that hardware effective. It creates confusion. It creates hesitation. And in a conflict where seconds matter, hesitation is fatal. At the same time, the geography of the conflict amplifies the pressure. The Strait of Hormuz is narrow, constrained, predictable. It is not an open ocean where maneuverability provides safety. It is a corridor where every movement can be anticipated. Subsurface threats increase. Asymmetric tactics become more effective. The cost of maintaining presence rises dramatically. And this is where the strategy becomes clear. It is not about sinking fleets. It is about making their presence unsustainable, turning every deployment into a liability, turning every patrol into a risk calculation. But the pressure does not stop at the water. It expands across the region. Israel, long accustomed to operating with confidence, now faces a different reality. Not a single front, but multiple vectors of pressure from the south and east, Iranian capabilities. From the north, reinforced networks with increased coordination. From the northwest, shifting political dynamics that complicate strategic planning. This is not about immediate destruction. It is about long-term exhaustion, forcing decisions, stretching resources, creating dilemmas where every choice carries consequences. And this is where the psychological dimension becomes decisive. Confidence is a strategic asset. Once it begins to erode, everything else follows. Markets react, population question. Allies hesitate. The perception of control is as important as control itself. And right now, that perception is slipping because the narrative has shifted from dominance to reaction, from initiative to response. And once that shift occurs, regaining momentum becomes exponentially harder. What makes this moment historic is not just the scale of the confrontation, but the nature of the transformation. For decades, the global order has been structured around a single center of power. Decisions flowed outward. Stability was maintained through a combination of military presence and economic influence. But that structure depended on predictability, on the assumption that the center could manage crises effectively. When that assumption is challenged, the entire system begins to adjust. We are now witnessing that adjustment. Alternative frameworks begin to emerge. New alignments form, not necessarily through formal declarations, but through practical decisions. Trade routes shift, financial systems adapt, strategic partnerships deepen, and slowly, almost invisibly, the balance changes, not through a single event, but through a series of interconnected responses to a perceived instability. Trump's decision was meant to reinforce authority, to demonstrate that the United States still controls the critical choke points of the global economy. But in doing so, it has exposed a vulnerability, because control of a choke point is only effective if others accept that control. Once they begin to challenge it, to adapt around it, its value diminishes. And in some cases, it becomes a liability, because it invites confrontation, it forces response, it accelerates change. This is why the coming phase is so unpredictable, because it is not defined by a single battlefield or a single timeline. It is defined by interactions across multiple domains: military, economic, technological, psychological, each influencing the other, each creating feedback loops that amplify the overall effect. And in such an environment, traditional metrics of power become less reliable. The United States still possesses immense capabilities. That has not changed. But capability without strategic alignment becomes difficult to apply effectively, and that is the core challenge now. Every move must account for multiple consequences. Every escalation risks triggering responses in other domains. Every attempt to regain control may accelerate the very changes it seeks to prevent. Meanwhile, the opposing side operates with a different logic. It does not seek immediate victory. It seeks positional advantage. It seeks to reshape the environment in which decisions are made, to create conditions where the opponent's strengths become weaknesses, where speed becomes recklessness, where power becomes overextension. And in that environment, patience becomes the decisive factor. As this second phase unfolds, one thing becomes increasingly clear. The outcome will not be decided by a single battle or a single decision. It will be determined by the ability to adapt, to recognize the shifting landscape, to move from reaction to strategy. And right now, that transition is far from guaranteed. What we are witnessing is not just a confrontation between nations. It is a transition between eras. The old assumptions are being tested. Some will hold, others will not. And in that process, the structure of the global order will evolve, not suddenly, but steadily, not visibly, but inevitably. This is the moment where history begins to turn, not with a dramatic explosion, but with a series of decisions that alter the trajectory of events, decisions that, at the time, seem rational, even necessary, but whose consequences extend far beyond their immediate context. The blockade of the Strait of Hormuz was one such decision. It was meant to project strength. Instead, it has revealed complexity. It has triggered reactions. It has accelerated dynamics that were already in motion. And now, those dynamics are shaping the next phase of the conflict. The question is no longer whether the system will change. It is how far that change will go, and who will adapt quickly enough to shape it. Welcome to the new reality. This is not a temporary crisis. This is a structural shift, and as the second round unfolds, the world will discover that power is no longer defined by who makes the loudest move, but by who understands the game being played beneath the surface. This is Silent Conflict Lab. Stay sharp.